And now I have to follow that, right? I don't know. That's what you're going to do. How many of you have heard the phrase, fake it till you make it? Yeah, everybody's heard that, okay. Well, I can't tell you how many people, usually, in my life anyway, professors, colleagues, co-workers, said to me when I was starting out as a psychotherapist and then again as a minister, that that's what you do. You put yourself out there in front of people as an expert, a professional, someone who knows what the heck they're doing, when in fact you're brand new and have no earthly idea. Winging it in the best way that you can is at least challenging. Being vulnerable in front of someone who has the expectation of you being this wonderful, amazing professional is tough. It's easy, or it was easy for me, to experience what's called imposter syndrome. Feeling like you're an imposter because you don't know enough, are not experienced enough, not smart enough, just not enough to be what is expected of you, or to do what is expected of you. I remember the first time, is that up there? Okay, good. I'll explain this in a minute. I remember the first time I had to lead a psychotherapy group. I was green. I mean, I hadn't done anything. I decided I'd look more like a psychotherapist if I were smoking a pipe. What do you think? It's like, you know, thoughtful, mature, maybe a little cool. Yeah. So anyway, looking back on it now, I didn't take up pipe smoking, which I only did that one time, so that members of the group would perceive me as a psychotherapist. I did it so I'd feel less like an imposter. I felt that the pipe gave me a gravitas, so I could cope with the feelings of shame. You know, I'm not good enough, I'm not who they think I am, and of course all this doubt was running through my mind and heart. I realized early on, no matter how much shame and doubt I experienced, the only way to get past these feelings was to be in the game. You heard a little while earlier Brene Brown, and she mentioned that quote by Theodore Roosevelt, and it's always resonated with me whenever I try to become a minister or a psychotherapist, an expert, an advocate, an ally. It's not the critic who counts, not the person who points out how strong the person stumbles, how the strong person stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the person who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short time and again, because there is no effort without error or shortcoming. But who does not actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends themselves in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end of triumph and high achievement, and who at worst fails. But at least they are failing, daring greatly, so that their place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. By the way, this will come up in a second, this is my idea of what the arena looks like. I don't think of myself like in a gladiator arena when it's like I have all the lights on me at the same time and I'm walking into this crowd of people. It doesn't matter how many people there are. But I will tell you, I have talked in front of thousands of people, in rallies, in pulpits, in front of lawyers, judges, mayors, police chiefs, in front of people similar to me and people very different than me. And it's always felt like this. I've been supported and I've been challenged, I've been affirmed and I've been threatened. The thing I've learned is that a person who is most likely to stop me from stepping out on that stage is me. I am my worst critic. I am the one who knows all the things lurking in my shadow, my shame, my doubt, the things I regret and feel guilty about, the times I let shame and fear control me. And I will tell you, it is easier to remember those times than it is remembering the successes, the changes I've made in the world, the times I really made a difference. Vulnerability is about being in the arena, about being willing to fail, about risk, about sharing a part of yourself, about daring greatly. I can't tell you how many times when I was new to ministry that I questioned whether my message was meaningful, useful, inspirational, something to those people who are listening to me. How could I possibly say something that would touch someone in some way that made them think, feel, that called them to action, that inspired them to embrace transformation? And my goodness, if anyone said something, even a small comment by one person about the message, well, that just reinforced my imposter syndrome. I will tell you that today I am not weighed down by shame. I do not let my critic, my shame monster, stop me from being in the arena. I am willing to risk vulnerability. I know I have made a difference in people's lives. I have touched people, inspired people, called people to action. And I also know I'm not perfect. That not every sermon hits it out of the park. I guess y'all know that already, but that's not a reason to stop. If I stopped every time I failed, I wouldn't have been a psychotherapist and I wouldn't be a minister here today. Someone, a psychotherapy colleague 30, 40 years ago, said, I was going through a tough time, and he said, don't give up. Keep doing what you're doing. And if you fail, keep in mind that all you're doing is talking. Well, and then he said, well, talking can't kill people. I'll say, well, that's literally true, but after thinking about it for a while, and I think you would agree that there is a more nuanced understanding of the power of words than that. Words can kill a person's spirit. Words can cause people to feel dead inside. And words said cannot be easily taken back. And as a minister and a psychotherapist, my words, whether I want them to or not, have more power over someone that's listening than I realize. Whether I want that to be the case or not, they can influence people. I remember once when I was in Cedar Rapids serving People's Church Unitarian Universalist. This is the Cedar Rapids Gazette for the flood that happened. It was a 100-year flood, 500-year flood. Anyway, there was this young evangelical minister. He preached that same-sex marriage was as destructive as the 500-year flood that wreaked Cedar Rapids a year before. He preached to his flock that to do everything possible to stop same-sex marriage. And he was surprised when he got hateful emails from the public about his message as soon as it got beyond the walls of his church. The Gazette reached out to me about his message. They interviewed him, and then they reached out to me. And one of the things I said in the interview was that this young preacher must not really understand the power of the pulpit. In other words, that his message deeply touched people and called them to action beyond his imagining. And they published that article that I was part of, and after it was published, he called me. I was surprised, and I agreed to talk to him. He genuinely didn't understand why people reacted the way they did, heaping on him shame and vitriol. And I believe the weight of the shaming was on the verge of shutting him down, leaving his church, leaving the ministry. Yes, he preached a message he truly believed, yet the response outside the congregation surprised him. Not adulation and support as he had expected, but attacking, treating his message as shameful, and the attacks kept coming. I tried to help him realize that he was empowered by his position in his congregation and by the being in the pulpit, that he had the potential to change people's lives, and that he needed to be aware of the magnitude of that power and be careful how he wielded it. And I said messages of othering and hatefulness, of dictating that all society should adhere to what he determined as absolute right and wrong, were at least problematic. You know, I tried to be very aware of what I was doing because I know it would have been easy for me to heap more shame on him. But he was getting plenty of it. He was just about ready to step out of the arena. And you know, some people might have said, Tom, you should have just let him go. You know, open the door and let him go out the door. But what I wanted to do was to try to help him stay in the arena and use his power constructively for love, for connection, for real justice. We really talked. I felt like he really listened. I will admit to you that while I felt like I was teaching him, I didn't know if he really was there to learn. I don't know what eventually happened to him, but I felt like it was my role in that time to help him through the shame, to help him understand what he did and what he could be and could do in the world. What about you? Do you think you're in the arena? What do you do with your power in that arena? Do you risk? Are you vulnerable? Are you working for the greater good, for love, for building connection between people, for justice? And when you step out on that arena, I wonder, how does shame, either yours or shame that other people try to put on you, try to stop you from being out there and using your power? What messages do you give yourself that you are not good enough, not strong enough, not smart enough? The messages that weigh you down and keep you from getting in the arena of life. Now, some of you might say, well, Reverend Tom, you're probably not bothered by shame anymore because of all your experiences, and you know, you've gotten through them and coped with them, with shame time and time and time again. And I would say, yes, that's true. That's certainly true. That I am less weighed down by shame than I used to be. But the shame messages, shame monsters, are still in me. And when I'm too hungry, too tired, my blood sugar drops, when I'm under a lot of stress, they raise their ugly heads and try to impact me. Try to make me get out of the arena. But I have learned not to let them control me. For I know each time I give in to them, I let them control my behavior, what I'm saying, what I'm doing, I empower them. So how do you manage the shame messages within you? I believe we all have them, hidden in the dark recesses of our psyche. What strategies do you employ to keep them from weighing you down? I'm going to offer a couple this morning. But I want to say these are just some ideas. I hope you continue the search to find the ones that work for you and that you stay in the arena. Well, that's the first one I want to mention, is just don't step out of the arena. Don't let the monsters control you. I know it's hard. I know with all the light shining down on you and people giving you their attention, people listening to you, it's hard not to step out of the arena, not to be overwhelmed, not to let the shame monsters have power. But if you can stay in, they have less power over you. Another way to manage those shame monsters is to talk to someone you trust. Ask them to hold a space for you as you give voice to those destructive messages. Often just giving voice to them, you can see that these thoughts and feelings are irrational, are destructive. The person you're talking to, well, they're just holding that space. They don't give you any feedback. They're not giving you any advice. They're not trying to tell you that those thoughts are irrational. He, she, they are just there to listen without judgment, so that you can see these messages for what they are. One more thing you might try. I found that spiritual practices really help me. Meditation, prayer, ritual, they help me to get enough emotional distance from the shame monsters to more easily understand the irrationality and destructiveness of those messages. Now, I could just say that to you, and you could say, oh, okay, I can do that. But I thought, let's try it. So what we're going to do, if you are willing, is I'm going to invite you to a little exercise in using meditation to get some distance from some of those shame monsters. So before we get started, I want you to I want you to allow yourself to bring up one of those shame messages. Don't think of one maybe that's really intense, maybe one you have some control over already to some extent, and just allow it into yourself. Okay, now just take a deep breath, close your eyes, and bring your attention to your breathing. Just breathing in and breathing out, paying attention to that sensation of the air coming into and out of your body. And when your attention sways away from your breathing, just gently bring it back, and gently bring it back, and gently bring it back over and over again, so that some people meditate with candles. What we're meditating with is just your breath right now, allowing yourself to just give your whole self to the air coming into and out of your body. As you do, you'll notice that things, ideas, emotions, thoughts, physical sensations, noises, just come in and out of you, float in and out of your consciousness. And as they do, just keep bringing your attention back to your breathing. Don't try to push those thoughts out. Don't try to hold them on. Don't try to hold on to them. Don't try to think about them. Just allow them, as you breathe, to pass in and out of you. You'll notice that these distractions float around until they become disempowered and gradually leave your consciousness. It's not that your mind will become quiet necessarily, but that all those things passing through you are just not that important. Maybe you see them in a new light now. So let that shame message come into your consciousness now, the one you noticed or thought about earlier. And again, keep bringing your mind, your focus to your breathing as that shame message floats around inside you. Don't push it out. Don't hold on to it. Just breathe and keep gently bringing your attention back to your breathing. And notice what happens. Notice what happens to that shame thought as you breathe. It just becomes less powerful. All right, you can open your eyes. You might take a deep breath. All these practices are practices. We have to do them over and over and over again for them to really work well for us. They're coping mechanisms that require practice to be as helpful as they might be to reducing the weight of shame, to disempower the shame within you. To end, I want to share again that prayer I offered earlier. I changed one line so that resonated more with me, and it's the last line. You'll hear it as we get there. But I want to share these words once more. Spirit of life, teach us to love into brokenness, ours and others, to give space for, to be patient with our healing, to let us be strong in our vulnerability, in our not knowing, in exposing our less than perfect scary bits to those in front of us. Give us courage to face judgment, scorn, hatred in the service of a greater good. Let us be disciples of essential goodness, strong in our knowing that in each being, including us and all in the world, there is light, a divine light of the soul. Give us strength to keep feeling empathy even when we are tired and broken. For it is then, my friends, we are empowered to stay in the arena. Blessed be.